Hello everybody, this is Andrei and you are on the Marketing Innovation Podcast Show. Our special guest today is Kemp, who is the CEO of LeadRoll.co, a cutting-edge outbound sales agency that replaces SDRs and guarantees high-ticket sales appointments at scale. Today we'll discuss effective strategies in mixing marketing and sales to grow your B2B business, as well as sales innovation and innovation in the sales technology space. Tyler, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you? Let's roll.
Love it. Andrei, thank you so much for having me. I think we're going to have an action-packed podcast today. A lot of really good stuff to share. Really pumped to dig in to the current state of marketing to sales. If you're listening today, guys, you're probably affected by things like iOS 14. You're probably affected by changes in LinkedIn, their Connect request. You're probably affected by Google's third-party Pixel changes or Facebook's retargeting limitations, all kinds of stuff going on right now, which makes this podcast episode really important. Andrei, how would you prefer that we take this?
Well, I think that we can start off by giving people a bit more context around you, around the agency, how it came about, and what you guys are doing at the moment. And then we can dive into the strategies and things that we were briefly discussing before the show that I think our audience, many of them will be the first time that they actually hear about some of this stuff, which makes it really exciting. And then also the actionable things that our audience, as well as their peers, could do in scaling up their sales, marketing activities, alignment, and overall boost business forward.
Right. Yeah. Get it to grow. So I'll give you the quick background on me. If you haven't heard of me or you don't know kind of the stuff that I've got my hands in, Tyler Kemp here. I've been, let's actually go back a little bit. I cut my teeth in sales 2 decades ago, probably in demand gen for about 10 years. Started my first business in my early 20s after, some youthful entrepreneurial stuff, and didn't make any money. I had ran this little business for like 3 years and no real money. Okay. We made money, we scaled, we did stuff, but we didn't make real money. And having said that, I learned a lot. Took these learnings, went into the mortgage sector, residential mortgages. I worked with a single loan officer, and he was originating the loans. I was bringing in the business, and I applied a lot of what I learned about scaling, about systems, about true sales process. And together, we were doing 120 million in loan volume annually, year over year, growing 20% year over year. I went on from there to teach and train about 20 top producing teams that were doing somewhere between 50 and 100 million to get to the next echelon. From there, I went to become on the marketing advisory board of a $16 billion company before the age of 30. I was in my mid 20s and I was on a $16 billion company's advisory board. And then I left that to go into startup space, worked with a company called HomeBot, get from 60 grand a month to 200 grand a month in 8 months, 4x growth. Really, really radical, really fast. And then launched what is LeadRoll. And LeadRoll, again, to your point, Andrei, in your introduction here, is we specialize in high ticket businesses. We're a multi-million-dollar organization. I've built several 7- and 8-figure businesses at this point. And what we do is we book high ticket appointments, guaranteed for sales teams. We take the place of an SDR and we light up sales teams' calendars like a Christmas tree. Now, we do specifically work with companies that are either in the U.S. or selling to the U.S., trying to break into the U.S. So, if you're listening, you're like, holy crap, I got to work with these guys. Just know, we can best help you if you're trying to enter into the U.S. market. Otherwise, a lot of what I'm going to share with you is relevant no matter where you are. And now we've got, hundreds of clients, and we are launching ever forward. And the future is a little bit tumultuous for a lot of people. There's a lot of questionable things happening in terms of data privacy, in terms of platform changes. in terms of what can you actually do today to be successful. And I think that the changes are targeting small business. They want small business to shrivel, right? How are you going to do demand if you don't get some of these things solved? If some of these changes are rendering Facebook ads for many completely useless, are rendering paid ads completely useless, are rendering outbound automation that they might have been tinkering with completely useless. So today, I think our time would be well spent to share how you, as a small, medium, enterprise business, can actually solve these problems for yourself and potentially thrive when your competitors are shriveling up and dying.
Sounds good. So I suggest let's take it from, from the umbrella view and talk about how you guys are working with your clients at the moment as an agency from the sales perspective. And here we can kind of debate how that might be or might not be different. For the record, so for the people tuning in, you guys probably know we are a marketing agency as well. So, from the alignment of marketing and sales, mainly from this point as a sort of external party that comes into the business and helps. Tyler, how are you guys doing it? How do you work with your clients and what's the relationship there? And then I'd like to dive a bit more and in more details into the innovation in the tech space and sales technology and things like this, because I think those are really, really insightful and can open eyes for a lot of people.
Completely. Yeah. So our relationship with the client is built on a very simple premise, which is that unless you are deep in the weeds and unless you really have a robust and thorough understanding of a successful sales process, it's going to be very hard to continue to iterate and drive actual results. I think that, we've kind of taken our stand against the some of the brand awareness mantra in favor of really focusing on sales activity that moves the needle, outbound sales, driving leads, making sure that leads are actually worked and nurtured effectively, things like that. And so when a client comes to us, they've probably tried dozens of other agencies in the past that didn't actually yield results. They kind of got into some hype. They thought, oh, I need to do this new thing. Maybe I need to do a lot of social posting. Maybe I need to do whatever. And they are a little disenchanted because they did it, they paid a bunch of money, and then no sales were generated. And what they were told is, well, you people know your brand more. So when they work with us, they work with us because they want to drive revenue. We calculate the math with them. We show them what does they might tell us, well, I want to add 5 million in revenue in the next 6 to 12 months. And we work backwards to figure out what exactly do we need to do to hit that number in terms of outbound, in terms of selling, in terms of bringing their solution to market, identifying the prospects, doing all the magic stuff that we do, which we'll get to probably in a second. But in the end, delivering massive net profit results to these businesses and allowing them to scale super duper fast. They can scale up, they can scale down way faster than they can scale their internal sales team, way faster than they can scale a team of SDRs. And we get probably 10 times the result of that, if not dramatically more, with a fraction of the cost.
Mm-hmm. Got you. So just to shine a bit of light before we go into the actual tactics and the sales process and the points that we were discussing just before, let's discuss a bit for that, like, the decision makers. As I mentioned before, we have a number of C-level people on the show. Many of them maybe were not yet thinking about going and breaking into the US. Maybe some are already there, but they don't know what's out there and how US might be different from other markets. Can you tell us a bit about what's different or why you guys are working primarily with the US so that people can understand what might be that is different in what they should do locally if they are not from the US?
Right. Yeah. Why should you Why should you focus on that market? Well, the first reason is that if you're a UK listener, if you are a listener in countries where you've got some very stringent privacy regulations like GDPR, obviously you have to jump through a lot of hoops to try to figure out who the heck you're supposed to market to, and you have to jump through a lot of hoops to actually market to them. Now, those hoops are not insurmountable by any means. However, they definitely limit your ability to scale compared to a little bit more liberal policy on B2B sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a very, 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 very small chance that the US would ever institute something like a GDPR. And if they did, I doubt it would ever be effective to B2B. So with that in mind, and even if it is, it can be solved for. But right now, today, there is a massive opportunity because a couple things are happening. I mentioned at the start of the podcast that there are 4 particular updates that most all of you, if not all of you, are going to feel. Definitely we feel it in the US. And those updates are as follows, right? The first is iOS 14 has given people the option to opt out of being tracked with their ads. And so that means that someone doing Facebook ads, for example, would have just no analytics on these on their performance. It renders their ads essentially useless for targeting and other purposes as well. The second big update is LinkedIn. If you've been doing LinkedIn automation and you're using tools out there, there's a lot of tools that do LinkedIn automation. If you're using that stuff, you've probably realized that you're not getting any results right now, and you're getting flagged for sending too many connection requests. LinkedIn has limited the amount of connections you can send in a day. Used to be you could send 100 a day, 100 connection requests a day. Now you can only send 100 in a week, and that's in the best case scenario. In fact, not only that, I mean, I've seen folks limited to about 7. And I've got some team members even who were just looking at too many profiles and got banned by LinkedIn just for looking at profiles manually, no automation whatsoever, on their own profile. So there's a lot of, like, LinkedIn's coming down hard and rendering a lot of that stuff dead in the water. You can still do like open in-mail sends and stuff, and there's workarounds, but I'm telling you now that much of that world is about to just die a nasty death, and there's going to be a lot of unhappy banned people very soon if you don't get ahead of it. The next update is, of course, that Google Chrome is eliminating third-party pixels. So basically, they are consolidating data and making sure that other companies are not able to, they're not going to render other data that's not Google's pixel stuff. So basically, the long and short of it is it's going to render your ads also useless for many, many people. And then finally, the Facebook updates. Facebook is, they used to allow you to track analytics around as many campaigns as you want, as many ad sets as you want, and many ads as you want. Now you're limited to, I believe it's 5 campaigns and 5 ad sets that you can actually track analytics for. Crazy, crazy nuts. And just this week, at least in this recording, they have reduced the time frame of their pixel from 6 months to 7 days. So if you've been relying on retargeting and you're saying, oh, I can place a pixel and that person's in my custom audience and for 90 days, 6 months, and I can continue to advertise to them, that is gone. It's gone. 7 days you've got to retarget based on a pixel. So all of these things, you better believe that advertisers are in trouble. You better believe small businesses are in trouble, that enterprise is in trouble. And so we have derived solutions to these problems. It's perfect timing, actually. And we know exactly, we have the secret keys to the kingdom in the US market specifically. That makes it so that none of that stuff really matters. So that is also why US market is the place to go.
In marketing's defense, indeed, there have been some changes, and some of them were really impactful, and we saw them across the board. From the insiders, perspective, there are some things that are going to be relaunched, and Facebook and Google and all these guys are working very much towards, being compliant and actioning the data privacy policies and everything else. But also there are some things that are going to be improving. And being a practitioner in this space and having clients from across the board, we saw some stability over, the official release was only last week, but changes have started to happen since the beginning of the year. Now things are starting to level down a bit more. But I would say, indeed, sales, mainly in the enterprise and medium enterprise space, is a very big component of growing a business. The way that we see them, for example, is complementary in the way that marketing will still be very important for branding and for driving relevant traffic. But sales is actually where you can have the the personal contact from the first touch. And there are some things that Tyler, you guys have that are really impressive. So I would like to discuss these, but before we go into the nitty-gritty and the sales technology, I'll be very keen to go through your closer formula and the steps that you guys follow and advocate to deliver an effective sales result.
Yeah, you bet. So the closer system is our trademarked sales methodology that basically is what we follow as our thesis for outbound. And it's boiled down into just a couple of steps, right? Every letter in the word closer stands for something, CLOSER. And so the first one is calculate the potential. And what that means is that you really should never start a sales initiative until you have a very firm grasp on the math. You need to understand that what your goal is and what exactly you need to do to get to that goal, instead of just trying some marketing thing, throwing money at it, seeing if it gets you money and hoping for the best, right? That's not a good stewardship of cash. So knowing your math from the start is how you can help ensure a hyper profitable unit case on the back end. If you can take all of your data and run the math, and your numbers, and your average statistical benchmarks to measure against, then you know what's possible. If you don't know those numbers, you're just playing a guessing game. The O in the closer system is omnichannel foundation. It basically means that your campaigns should be robust enough to reach people in multiple places at once, not just on LinkedIn, not just on email, not just maybe making phone calls, but actually trying to have a more holistic approach. And the other side to this is that you need to have foundational elements in your business that are going to set you up for success. And if you don't have these foundational elements, then you're basically building your campaign on the sand, and the wind and the waves are going to come around, and your house is going to sink. So one of the main foundational things you need is to solve for the spam box. If you don't solve for the spam box, then you are going to get blacklisted, and you are going to have abysmal deliverability in a cold email campaign. Every cold email is slowly dying a death. And if you don't know how to extend the life of that email, then you're in a really bad place. And so in order to do that, you've got to do a bunch of stuff on the back end. And we do go through it at leadroll.co in a presentation on our thesis, step by step, and what you really need to have. But the long and short of it is you have to know when you're in spam. You got to get yourself out of spam when you get there. You got to warm things up and have back and forth positive conversations to a degree that basically allow the platforms to understand that you are reputable. If you don't do that, your campaigns might as well be they might as well not be doing anything at all. The S is your scripts and personalization. So you need to design your outbound campaigns and your sales messages around a very particular, call it a style. The way that you do normal email marketing is not the same as you do cold email marketing. The way that you do outbound is so different from the way that you might write inbound campaigns. So the first step there is, well, I've got to write my messages in a way that's going to be relevant and impactful and lead somebody in to a meeting when they don't know anything about me. And that is a very, very hard thing to do unless you understand what needs to do. And we just have more data than anyone else on how to do it. And we learn from that. And we make data-driven decisions on the campaign. And now we're masters at it. The other thing there is you have to, automation alone is just not enough. If you start automating and you just spray and pray to thousands of people, and you are not tailoring your message to them, you are going to have abysmal results typically, or standard results. Standard results being not that many. I mean, honestly, your standard results are an open rate of maybe 20%, a reply rate, maybe, sub 1% normally, 2% if someone might be further along in that. And of those, how many are positive? Probably not many. Of those, how many book a call? Probably not many. Of those, how much was your data? Total crap, probably a lot. And then also, if you don't solve for deliverability, then still total crap. So that's why people think cold email doesn't work. We typically see doing what we do somewhere around 0.05% spam rate. So almost no spam once we've successfully done what we do. And we usually see between 70 and 80% open rate and between 30 and 50% reply rate in ice cold markets, with a very high positive reply rate and a very high booking rate. And we're reaching out to thousands of people a month when we're working with clients anyway. So it's actually high volume and high quality. But you have to be hand researching and hand writing someone a customized handwritten message, at least in the first line of your email. At least the first line needs to be just for them and no one else. And if you can do that, you can improve your results. The E stands for execution and process mapping. Know what you're going to do every step of the way, how you're going to handle positive replies, negative replies, neutral replies, how many times you're going to follow up, how many touch points you're going to have total if you get non-respondents. If someone wants to book a call and they don't book a call, what are you going to do about it? If they say they're going to book a call, they finally, they don't show up, what are you going to do? They do show up, what are you going to do? That's your process map, knowing what you're going to have and then executing on it with precision. And then finally, the R stands for reporting and optimization. Basically, everything needs to be reported. If it's anonymous, it's pretty much useless. So you need to know what are the emails, what are phone numbers, what are their contact details. Did they reply to me? Was it a positive, negative, or neutral reply? Did they book a call? If I'm doing stuff in other platforms, trying to tie that back in, knowing all of your numbers and using that data to optimize your campaign over time. You take 6 months, 12 months, build something that is masterfully crafted with data leading the way to proper split tests instead of just leaving something and never touching it for years. Those 6 steps are exactly what's necessary in order for a, I would say, a high ticket business to justify a really successful campaign and to execute a really successful campaign in outbound and generate insane ROI on the back end.
Mm-hmm. Can we go a bit back to the execution bit? Step 5.
Oh, I
And
forgot lead list. I skipped the L.
okay, go for it.
I spelled it as Kozer. Um, Let me say this, guys. The L in closer system stands for lead list development. And lead list basically simply means you can't, if you're relying on outdated data, you're buying cheap data sources. I had, at one point we tried that and we sent out emails to bad data and we were having replies, people saying, yeah, I haven't used this email in 2 years. It was at a company from way long ago. You like catch up, right? And totally ineffective. And so you have to have really good, high quality, accurate data. We're talking Zoom info level and above. If you don't, then it's gonna suffer. Your deliverability is gonna suffer. Your response rate's gonna suffer. You've got to have great leads, and it's also not enough to have firmographic leads, job title, company size, revenue, industry. That stuff is okay, but you've got to hit thousands of these people in order to find some interested. And of those, some of them might be qualified to work with you. So what you actually need is intent-based data. So you need to know who's actively looking right now for a solution like yours. Imagine the difference if you could know the actual name, not the company level, right? Not all intent data is created equal. So company level intent, basically useless. You need to know the names, the emails, the phone numbers of people actively looking for your solution. And if you do this process to those people, instead of just the people who are matching some kind of firmographic filter, here's 2 million people that have a CEO title, then imagine how much more effective your campaigns would be and how much more effective your ad spend would be. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's lead list.
We'll come back to this because I want to talk about the technology bit, and I think here is the place where we'll discuss most about it. But to sort of wrap it up with a closer formula, in terms of the execution, there's a number of people that maybe because they are not yet at that stage where they can work with an agency to outsource the sales element of this and lead generation, outbound lead generation, they might try to do it themselves or internally. Would you have some best practices given the fact that more and more companies are using technology and sales technology to automate some of the things that they do? And, some inboxes might get cluttered, for example, for CEOs that might be targeted by such automated campaigns without the intent data that you mentioned, just in bulk. Would you have some up-to-date best practices that people should implement if they run an outbound strategy themselves or internally, such as how many times should they follow up on a sales or on a sale, or how long should the follow-up sequence be in terms of time?
Yeah, it's more complicated than that, unfortunately, because doing sales is not typically cheap, right? You have to have a reasonably high ticket offer to justify a sales team. Now, if you're a solo practitioner and it's just you, no sales team, you are the business, well, then obviously you've got to figure out a lot of stuff, and you got to figure out, well, how the hell am I going to do any of this? Truth is, you can't. You can't alone. You just can't. There's no way to do this right and do it yourself. All you can do is kind of take scrappy solutions and scrappy growth hacks and try to piece together the cheapest way to possibly get results, but then you're not going to really you might get enough results, but you might burn more leads than you actually create. Mm-hmm. So my advice to someone who is in that position, because guess what, man? Connections on LinkedIn, like we said, they're done. They're done. You're not going to grow that way. And you run the risk of getting banned. And they're very serious about that. You can try to do in-mail sends. I mean, really the best thing you can do is, if you're not in 6-figure land yet, you need to hustle yourself to more sales, and you got to get yourself out of the service delivery. Mm-hmm. Focus on getting the service delivery that you're doing more taken care of so you can focus on sales and focus on it yourself. When you get to 6 figures, then invest in actually getting good data so that you can use it. I mean, the data's not, I mean, think of it like this. I could sell intent data for the US markets somewhere between $1 to $2 a contact. Imagine if you knew that information, how much he's spending to acquire a customer right now. And I can guarantee you it's more than freaking $2. And of course it's going to be more than that because we sell it in batches. But the idea here is you don't have to figure out how to become an enterprise with your scrappy solutions. You just have to get to the point where you have enough money to reinvest in yourself. And if you can have another commission only salesperson, or maybe you can afford to pay salary of a salesperson, that's fine. And they really need what we do. But whether or not you've got that cadence of emails, it's all going to depend on how you try to do it. Are you buying a really cheap list of, 100,000 emails from the 90s that actually are completely outdated and don't really do you any good? And you try to email them. Maybe you're going to try to blast email them with like a tool like MailChimp and get banned from the platform, and it doesn't work and goes right to spam. Like, it's actually going to do you no good. So you cannot hack your way to the top because the platforms are too sophisticated for that. They're getting too sophisticated. You can't just use a lem list and a whatever to try to automate cold emails because, again, you're just burning leads. You buy cheap leads, you send them automation, you're going to burn your domain, and you're going to end up on blacklists. It's going to screw you up. Even if you have a burner domain and you do this, you're just wasting a lot of time and effort to try to get results that you could have avoided if you just made a few phone calls to people. Make a few phone calls, do a couple, do it manually until you can do it right. Mm-hmm. Do it manually until you can do it right. And once you can do it right, then you buy data and then you still do it manually, right? Imagine if you made 100 phone calls or sent 100 manual emails to people that were in market. You think you're going to make a sale? Much higher likelihood that you're going to do that. What if you work with us, we're going to send 2,000 in a month to these people, and we're going to handwrite them messages, and we're going to be omnichannel, and we're going to make sure that you've got an immaculate deliverability, and we're going to do the execution correctly, and we're going to report all of the stuff. So once you can actually afford to work with a company like us, and we're not cheap, right? People work with us when they have cash and they're ready to get to that next level. Millions and millions of revenue is what they want to drive. So, they'll trade let's just say they'll, $100,000, right? Who would not trade 100,000 for $1 million all day long? We would all do that, mm-hmm. right? And that's just an example. So, and that's not for the data. That's for done for you. Someone wants data. I can sell you data for rates that I mean, it's still $1, $2 a contact, but you think to yourself, what can I actually do with that data? If I'm targeting US, it's US only. Mm-hmm. Another thing I can do, well, I don't want to jump the gun on you here, Andrei. So if you want to talk about tech, I've got some things to talk about there, but to the small business, my best advice is don't take shortcuts. One of the best advice I've got is take the long road. It's faster.
Mm-hmm. Don't worry. I'm happy to drift away and to focus on the things that are important in our conversation. I think this one is one thing that I wanted to maybe clarify with you right now, because you mentioned it's only for the US. So as we have listeners from more areas of the world, would, for example, somebody from Spain or France, if they had the data that you own, be able to sell in the US without any issue using that data, or does it fall into other regulations as far as you know?
No, yes, they could. They could take our data and sell into the United States. So let's talk about the data real quick so that we can get this out of the way. So I know who's in market for just about everything. I know who's B2C markets, who's buying health insurance. I know who's looking to buy real estate. Like I know who's shopping on Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.com and House, who's on those websites shopping it around, and I know them by name, and I can action them a week before they're sold on the Zillow marketplace. So I get the data, I get it fast, I know them by name, and I know that for a vast majority of people, and it's all legal, by the way. Nothing that, I mean, it's, I purchase the data. I purchase data from all kinds of sources, and then I validate the data through a very robust validation engine. It's actually checked manually by managed services, and they give yes and no's on all the data. And for context, we process 100 times more information in a day than ZoomInfo does. I process 5 million behaviors a second in my data set. I know, so in terms of data quantity, we've got, so again, contextually here, I believe ZoomInfo has about 150 million contact records. We have 270 million contact records. About 170 to 200 million of those have business emails. I've got about 100 million direct dial phone numbers in my database. So that's all the data quality and size over here. But the other thing that I have is an identity graph that is what I mentioned is helping resolve this personal identity that we've developed over the course of several decades. And we've rolled up companies that have had different parts of these machines, and then we built an even better machine. And it's about, I mean, it is decades ahead of anything else out there that I've ever seen. And so the other thing I can do is I can tell you 30 to 70% at the highest end of the personal identities of your website visitors, if they're in the US. So imagine, like, let's just say we're talking to an enterprise company here. Maybe they've got 2 million visitors on their website a month. How many of the names of those people do they know if they're not clients or they didn't fill out a form?
Oh.
Zero. They know zero of the names. I don't care who you talk to. I network with Fortune 100, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, and billionaires, and they've kicked the can on this issue. They don't even want to solve it. It's too complicated, and they don't have all the pieces necessary to get it done. So I can provide this level of intelligence to the market in a way that no one else ever has been able to do, and I can do it in an affordable fashion. Now, again, you're just starting out. I mean, you just have to figure out where you're going to invest your capital. But in the end, it's negligible if I can give you information that's going to turn into revenue. Mm-hmm. But it's not for you if you're just starting out, right? You're in 6 figures, you're good. Any less than that, it's going to be really tough for you. Mm-hmm. And you need to be able to scale. If you're just a one-man shop and every time you get a sale, you got to work for 5 years on it, it's going to be a lot harder for you because you can't constantly take on new business. So, those 2 elements really have to be in place.
Mm-hmm. Super. So I think most of our audience here is in the 6 figures and above. So I think you guys that maybe were not aware of such opportunities, this might have been an eye-opener for you. Also discussing the level of analysis that is possible in the US is really fascinating because we don't have that in Europe that much. And I think, it's a great opportunity there for somebody that wants to expand and they are looking for new ways of doing so, mainly if you can sell in the US from, UK or France or Germany, etc.
Advertising and outbound. That's it. You can do outbound. You can send emails the way that I just showed you with the closer system. You can take the data that we provide you, create better lookalike audiences, and continue to track forever. So we can provide you emails and device ID numbers. So you have that. You can continue to retarget. You can feed that info back into Facebook, back into Google, and all of the limitations of the privacy policy stuff going on right now, and not just privacy. It's not about privacy. It's about consolidation of power. They're consolidating power. They're not keeping you private. That's all they're doing. They're consolidating who has the information away from small business, but we can put that information back in your hands in a completely compliant way with regulation.
Great stuff. So guys, you'll have all the links in the description of this episode. Make sure to check them out. Tyler, I know we are getting close to the end of the show. So trying to draw some action points here, because we discussed a lot. There was a lot of valuable information and also actionable information here. What would be your advice for somebody that maybe hasn't really done a lot of outbound yet, or has done some outbound, but maybe they are looking to increase their performance? Where would you say they should be looking at first? Maybe, this week or the next?
Yeah. Number one, my best advice to you is don't take shortcuts. Again, it's gonna sabotage you in the end. You got to be real careful about buying a bag of goods. Don't go cheap. You can go cheap if you're bound by budget, then you have to just put your feet to the pavement and knock on doors, sell, make phone calls, do whatever you have to do to get to the point where you can invest in yourself. And don't buy the $100 shit. Like, you need to really invest in actionable stuff, right? Obviously, if someone's looking to work with us, you can go to leadroll.co, learn more about the closer system. Even if you're going to do it yourself, I suggest watching these videos, because we give away all of our best stuff, right? We just give it to you. You can take it. You can learn about how to do all of this effectively. And then when you are ready to take it seriously and take growth seriously, you want to start running better ads. You want to start running, just doing outbound. You can get access to our data where it doesn't exist elsewhere. So if you have that in hand and no one else has it, and we're just bringing it to market and not just trying to keep it all for ourselves at this point in time, then it's going to be a very unique opportunity. But I will say there is a sense of recency here, right? A sense of acting sooner rather than later, because the more you wait, the opportunities will go away. And this is something that your competitors just don't have. If you can afford it, I suggest going to leadroll.co, take a quiz. We'll get you a price, figure out if we're a good fit for you, and vice versa. And it could completely change your life.
Great stuff. And just as an indicator, and I know this will differ a lot because, it's services and it's managed services. So this will be very dependent on a lot of criteria. But would you have maybe like a starting threshold for people to expect when they work with something like your agency?
Yeah. So we'll work with you two options. If you are looking for done for you on outbound, you can really only justify it if you can justify a sales team. So easy way to think about that. If I'm going to hire a BDR, business development rep, or SDR, then you should look at LeadRoll instead. If your lifetime value of a customer is, say, $10,000 to $15,000 or above, that can be $1,000 paid over 15 months. It could be any combination. Then LeadRoll will likely be profitable for you, but you have to be able to sell remote, large enough target market for us to find, in-market behaviors for these people. Now, if you don't fit that criteria, let's just say you're a SaaS company or you're e-commerce, right? Let's say you're listening to this right now and you're from fucking Alibaba. Then you definitely want to talk to us, because I can tell you who's all shopping for what across the United States, right? Like, I can tell you who's looking for shoes, who's looking for, I got one guy, he's making $8 million a year with us using our data to sell vacuum parts. We tell them who's in market looking for vacuum parts, right? It doesn't have to be complicated. It just like that's the kind of nuts stuff that we're talking about here. And so low ticket can work as well on the data only, right? On the data only, or if you're particularly big, 100 million revenue and above, then there are other things that we can do for you that would blow your mind.
So this was falling into not in the done for you, but if you just need access to data. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We actually can do done for you with enterprise as well at a different level. But there's so much you can do with that data, right? Let's say you've got hundreds of thousands of clients and you want to know who's about to churn and go with a competitor. Well, I could tell you that because I know who's looking at their websites. So
and the personal name and email address
and phone number and everything. So you can get in front of that, reduce your churn, save yourself millions and millions of revenue just because you knew who was looking. Like it's the best business intelligence out there. You won't find anything like it.
Great stuff. Cool. Tyler, this was very insightful. Also, I got to find out some new stuff in terms of the technology out there, and I'll be sure to keep in touch. I think there are a couple of cases that we might be able to work together as well off the show. Guys tuning in, I'm sure you found a lot of new information and insight into this. Make sure to check Tyler's website as well. We'll have a link to your profile, Taylor, as well, in case there's people that want to personally reach out to you, maybe for business or partnerships. I know we have a couple of companies here and company representative that might be, you guys would be a great solution for them. And yeah, until next time, guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Tyler, again, thank you for being on the show. It's early morning for you, so keep crushing it. Have an amazing day and looking forward to speaking soon.
Thanks, Andrei. Thanks, guys.